All right, I thought I'd jump into a quick live stream here, do a little kind of mid-morning session recap type of video here. A little look at the action. I thought the action so far this morning was phenomenal. Wanted to talk about it. So we come into the session with ES trading right into that 50-80 main level of interest here, right? So there's going to be an important reference point coming into the session. Anytime we can come into the session with some type of nearby level of interest or nearby reference point, that's always going to be an ideal scenario. So look at where price is opening here versus the 50-80, and then contrast that with NQ, where price is opening right here versus our nearest levels of interest. So you have 17,525 down here and then 17,625 up here. Price is kind of in the middle. We don't really have great proximity to either of those levels of interest that we're on watch. So ES definitely the better watch, at least for the morning coming into the session. And what I had said in the pre-market prep, the live stream, just for context, is we want to see, you know, how price is going to respond versus 50-80. Then based on that response, we'll be looking for a trade up into 5100, potentially 5120, or if it's rejected, right, trade down into 50-50, maybe even that prior day low there on ES. And so keep that in mind, because this is always super important, where price is in relation to the big picture structure and then in relation to that nearest level of interest. So we come into the session, we're right here at 50-80, right? You can see a little blip higher, but ultimately this 2-minute bar closes near the lows, and this opening bar, not really a bullish development, is it? So we see 50-80 fail, right? Move right through VWAP. So at this point, once you start to see that 50-80 fail, you either need to be looking for a short entry, an area to get involved with a short for the move down into 50-50, or if you're wanting to trade longs, you need to wait until at least 10 a.m. and at least some type of structural development down here into 50-50. That's exactly what we saw. So price pretty much trades lower. You have an intraday trend lower, and the way to identify the trend is just look at your higher lows, or excuse me, your lower highs. So price, you get this initial push. All right, is price going to at least bounce into VWAP? In this case, no. It just gives you that little bit of barcode, then rolls over again. You get a little bit of a bounce, but this next bounce does not break that previous lower high. So we know the trend, at least intraday, is lower, right? So you get that move down into 50-50 right here, right just after 10 a.m. Now, this type of trade for me, very, very aggressive. I don't like taking these type of trades simply because we know intraday is in that downtrend, right? And so you can scalp this, but if you're trying to, this is what I call like a bottom fish type of entry. If you're trying to bottom fish any type of entry like that, you need to be doing so with very, very tight stops. And ideally, you know, once this actually gives you a point or two, you move that trail then into break even, because if this starts to falter at all, this is what you'll see, right? See that kind of cascade lower. Another thing that I had noticed here, at least in NQ, may not be the same here in ES, but price was rolling over at every shallow fib. So we have the initial low made right through here where my cursor is. Look how it bounces right into that shallow fib and then rolls over. If you're looking for some type of long entry and you're wanting to, you know, trade up, trade some type of bounce, watch that shallow fib, because if price can't even recover that shallow fib, that's telling you that sellers are still in control. So then we make a fresh low right here. Okay, so adjust your fib. Where's it bounce to? Directly into prior intraday structure, and then again, shallow fib. Rolls over, right? So we get another low. Okay, where are we at? Right through here, right? Just not even get into that shallow fib. So there's a tool that you can use to really gauge the strength of buyers, whether or not buyers are actually stepping in, or if each bounce is just more like a sellable opportunity, right? Because I bring this up because I see a lot of traders kind of see some type of signal bar. They think the long is good to go, and then it just rolls over. You get run over again. So ideally, if you're trying to catch a low in the index, one of the easier trades to wait for is just a higher low, right? In this case, we do have a bit of a higher low develop here. Now, this one was actually a little bit trickier because price has not yet shown an intraday change of character. So you get the intraday change of character up through this level, right through here, 56. And for a change of character, it's just a fancy way of saying that the trend has changed a bit. So a trend is defined by a series of lower highs and lower lows, not a trend line. Trend line does not define a trend. The trend is defined by the structure, in this case, a series of lower highs. Once that most recent lower high is negated, in this case on this bar, you have a change in character, right? So the first easiest trade here, if you're not wanting to trade the first half hour, if you're not, selling these pops or anything like that, or you're not trading kind of the 2-minute opening range break, first easy long here is once this higher low, this is your first clue that buyers are actually regaining control. Okay, now we did have another big clue right through here. Dom had pointed this out with the exhaustion volume. So you see a move like this, and then you start to see some volume that kind of equals or is even greater than the volume we see at the open. That's a big clue. That's a big clue. And that's from Volume Price Analysis by Anna Cooling. There's a free copy in the resources tab. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. That's a big clue right through there. So we start to see that exhaustion volume. Buyers really start to step in. Again, I have no level down here, so I'm not going to be grabbing this low personally. I like this type of trade right through here. Higher low into VWAP, right? This can be a phenomenal short. Now, if you are trading any type of VWAP strategy, make sure you're paying attention to the levels as well. This is going to be a way to amplify your understanding of price, because what does price do here? Well, it rejects VWAP, which is solid, but it just trades right down into 50-50. I'd posted in the chat at this time, trim your short, because this is definitely an area where other traders are going to be looking for a potential bounce, right? We got that big level of interest right through there at 50-50. And so one of the easier trades to the long side today is actually right through here. And the reason this is going to be an easier play is because we already know that change of character is in. So I had someone DM me asking about, well, how do you get involved once you identify that change of character? Now, one way is to look for that higher low. This is going to be a little bit more aggressive because we don't actually know that the change of character is in yet. The next way is just once you identify it and you have, those 15 and 30-minute bars really shaping up favorably, to wait for that next higher low, which is right through here. And you trade it into VWAP, you try and carry it for 50-80, right? Just apply your normal trade management techniques there. So some good action, some good two-way action today. This is like an ideal session for an active trader that you definitely want to be studying the action today and really kind of wrapping your mind around some of these higher time frame setups that we saw as well. Because if we flip to the 15, more so the 30-minute, like look at this action down here, right? Obviously these bars are quite bullish. Now on NQ, let's take a look intraday. I'll give a little kind of intraday breakdown here as well. So NQ, now very similar type of structure develops. So we get that initial push lower. Now I'm actually interested in 525. So I'll try some scalps through here. I actually did. I'll post those executions later today. Try some scalps through here, but again, context and making sure you have your bearings on where price is incredibly important. What do we have overhead? VWAP, right? And we're within the context of an initial move that has pushed lower. So we're below the open. We know that all of this is pretty much a big unfilled gap overnight. Remember, take a look at your regular trading hours chart. see an unfilled gap here. Okay, first 5-minute bar is red. Well, that tells me probability is price is going to be filling that gap lower. All right, and so with that in mind, yeah, I'll try a couple longs for some scalps, but much like I mentioned in the ES trade, you want to do those with much tighter stops, right? Not giving them a long leash and taking whatever profits you can get and then raising that trail up to break even or better, or just exiting the entirety of the play like into some prior market structure. So for example, I had this initial long, right? Take it off, this second long, and it's pretty clear to me that there's intraday resistance right here. So we just sell it all into that point on the chart where we know there are sellers. Not anticipating a break or anything like that. If it does break, then yeah, I'll look for a re-entry. But again, just working with probabilities here, most likely this gap is going to be filled. So I'll take what I can get. If it does continue, great. If not, then we'll keep looking for some lower prices. So you get that push through the lows here. And again, a simple exercise is just take your fib, just rolls over at more of these shallow fibs. Like there's your 38, right? Here's your next low, 38 again. Now, one of the better short entries here on NQ is right through here, right? You have a strong signal bar. Price rejects prior structure and just really, really rolls over from there. I think I lost my mouse. There it is. So I love that opportunity to the short side. We know that the overnight gap has not yet been filled. We know that we now have one of our downside reference points now acting as resistance, right? And so we want to try and catch the move from 525 down at the very least into session low, which will be a first notable target. You can trim there, but try and carry down for that 400, right? Pay attention to the levels. If you don't have the levels marked out on your chart, I post them with the notes every morning. You can lean on those levels. So we trade down into 400. That's also the prior day low. So this is a big key level. It's also the prior day low. Take a look at your daily chart. So I have weekly profiles on my daily chart. That means this little blue line right through here is where all of the volume has been done for that week. So last week, we know that all of the volume was done at 400. So far it's looking like that was accumulation volume. Remember, any type of volume point of control is usually going to serve as a strong reference point, an area where price can potentially bounce or roll over, right? Support or resistance. That's how I use it. Now, again, this trade a little bit too aggressive for me. I'm going to pass on that one. I did get involved right through here. Again, I'll post those executions later. This is pre-change of character, right? But I had decent conviction that this higher low would hold with at least a test into this area, and then ideally that move into VWAP that we saw. So that's going to be one of the first easier longs, simply because we know that, yeah, buyers are already here. We have our exhaustion volume on the chart. We're testing big downside levels of interest. Doesn't mean that we think price is necessarily going to be retesting highs or closing on session highs or anything like that. But as far as a trade opportunity back into VWAP, so it's a suitable setup. Now you get into VWAP, right? And VWAP aligns with an upside level of interest, 525. So if we're assuming that this is a higher low, is this a long that we want to take? Let's think about the risk to reward prospect here. Grabbing longs through here. Here's our first target. There's an upside level of interest. There's VWAP. There's prior intraday structure. So you really got to ask yourself, is putting on any risk worth just scalping 10 points if I know that there's probably going to be a seller sitting here? Probably not, right? Probably not. So at that point, what you want to wait for is a short signal to materialize to trade this short. Or, again, if you're focusing on longs, that next higher low. Now this, we don't have a level here, but we do have some prior intraday structure. And this aligned pretty nicely with that test of 50-50 in ES. So this was another solid setup. I was in this one for a scalp back into VWAP. So overall, some very good action today. That's kind of a breakdown of what we've seen currently. Now, as far as looking forward, We still have some decent volume, though volume has really tapered out. I do suspect that, at least for this session, the high and low most likely in for now. You want to keep an eye on, if you're still trading here, you want to keep an eye on your 525, and then session high and session low is kind of the main levels of interest here for NQ for the current session. And then continuing to watch how this structure builds out. Now I'm fully expecting price to trade as an inside day today. Mentioned that during the pre-market prep. We do have NFP tomorrow, and that is going to be a much larger print. So definitely expecting some volatility with NFP, and much like with FOMC heading into, you know, those larger, more watched data prints, price can be a little bit slower. So that's what I look for in NQ. And then ES, pretty similar. We want to watch the edges of the current structure, and then your 50-50. So today's low, today's high, and then 50-50 will be some solid reference points here on ES. Hope everyone had a good morning. Again, some pretty solid action today. I highly recommend you review the structure from today. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM. Otherwise, I'll see you for the session recap. Later.